We live in an era where tech billionaires completely dominate the headlines. But today, we are going to totally shatter your perception of what extreme wealth actually looks like. The staggering reality of historical wealth is on a completely different level. I mean, think about this right now. Who actually had more money, Elon Musk or Genghis Khan? Sure, today's richest individuals might have their own private space programs, but historical conquerors, they literally commanded the known world. Okay, let's dive into this. The wealth of today's tech billionaires, massive as it is completely dwarfed by historical titans. We're talking about fortunes so unbelievably large, they broke foreign economies, dictated global trade, and literally accounted for massive chunks of the entire world's GDP. It's insane. Here is the roadmap for our explainer today. We'll go beyond modern billionaires. Meet the Renaissance monopolist, the Golden King, the Emperor of Rome, the Mogul Titan, and finally, we'll uncover the true meaning of wealth. Section 2. The Renaissance monopolist. Meet a commoner who became so rich he actually bought popes and bankrolled kings. $531 billion. Born into a merchant family in Augsburg, Jakob Fugger mastered this innovative system of double-entry bookkeeping in Venice, and this was a real game changer. It gave him unmatched visibility over his cash flow, allowing him to make these highly calculated, high-risk loans to the powerful House of Habsburg. Adjusted for inflation, his net worth reached an estimated $531 billion in today's money. Just let that sink in. So how exactly did he pull this off? Well, through his ventures in places like Hungary and Bohemia, Fugger established a near monopoly on European copper mining. Now, copper was absolutely critical back then for making coins and weapons. By controlling this one single vital resource, his personal wealth grew to represent roughly 2% of the entire economic output of Europe. Let me repeat that. 2% of an entire continent's GDP, controlled by just one private businessman. Holding 2% of Europe's wealth is astounding, right? But what if your wealth wasn't just a fraction of an economy? What if your fortune was so vast and you spent it so lavishly that you actually accidentally broke a foreign economy? Section 3. The Golden King. Now, what's really interesting about this is Mansa Musa. As the 14th century ruler of the Mali Empire, his kingdom was the world's largest producer of gold, and he personally controlled an estimated half of the old world's entire gold supply. Half. Contemporary sources literally describe his riches in terms that are impossible for the time. His wealth was so profound that there is really no way to put an accurate number on it. He was simply richer than anyone could possibly describe. The sheer, unbelievable scale of this wealth became legendary during his pilgrimage to Mecca. Picture this. When Musa arrived in Cairo, he and his followers began distributing their gold so lavishly that they actively depreciated its value. He literally triggered hyperinflation. We're talking over $1 billion in economic losses in the Middle East just from him handing out gold. And you know what the ultimate irony is? By the time he left a year later, his money was completely used up. He was actually forced to borrow money back from Egyptian merchants at incredibly high interest rates just to get home. Crazy, right? Crushing a foreign economy with sheer generosity is absolutely wild to think about. But what if you didn't just crash an economy? What if you personally owned one? Section 4. The Emperor of Rome. Ruling from 63 BC to 14 AD, Augustus Caesar held a personal fortune equivalent to a staggering $4.6 trillion in modern money. Trillion, with a T. How on earth did he do that? Because for a while, Augustus literally owned all of Egypt, personally. It wasn't just some territory he ruled over, it was his private property. To put that into perspective, under his rule, the Roman Empire accounted for 25 to 30% of the entire world's economic output. And within that massive sprawling empire, Augustus personally held wealth equivalent to 1/5 of his empire's entire economy. It is a level of centralized, personal resource control that is honestly hard to even comprehend today. Rome's economic dominance was legendary, but it naturally raises a huge question. Could any other empire ever match this staggering 25% of global GDP? Section 5. The Mogul Titan. Let's move to and see how this builds, because the answer is yes. As the 16th century emperor of India's Mughal dynasty, Akbar the Great commanded an empire fueled by a massive agricultural sector and high-quality manufacturing like textiles and shipbuilding. And guess what? This also accounted for roughly 1/4 of global economic output. This expert-driven economy actually surpassed the Qing dynasty and Europe, making it a true pinnacle of pre-industrial wealth generation. And this brilliantly illustrates just how massive we're talking. To really understand this sheer financial muscle, let's look at the annual revenue from the year 1595. The entire British Treasury collected about 1.6 million pounds. In that exact same year, the Mughal state revenue was valued at 17.5 million pounds. The Mughal treasury was more than 10 times larger than the entire British crowns. So let's break down the mechanics of this staggering wealth. First, India under Mughal rule produced a massive 28% of the world's industrial output. Second, because of the intense global demand for Indian textiles, 80% of the empire's imports consisted of bullion, mostly silver from the New World. Akbar used this to create a highly stable silver rupee, keeping its purity above 96%. And finally, his state was incredibly effective at wealth extraction. Akbar's personal treasury housed 90% of South Asia's total wealth. We're talking separate vaults dedicated strictly to gold, silver, and precious gemstones. Today, his equivalent economic command is estimated at a mind-bending $21 to $29 trillion. Section 6, the true meaning of wealth. So the crucial point is, when we look at Fugger, Musa, Augustus, and Akbar, what do they actually teach us? Extreme wealth is absolute control over global resources. It's not just a big bank balance. Modern wealth is so often measured in stock valuations and digital numbers on a screen, right? But historical peak wealth? That meant cornering the entire market on European copper, holding half the old world's gold, literally personally owning the nation of Egypt, or commanding 25% of the globe's GDP through an unyielding tax and silver network. True historical wealth was direct, undeniable power over the Earth's raw materials and its populations. Which leaves us with this. If an economic command equivalent to $27 trillion was possible centuries ago, before the Industrial Revolution even began, what will the peak of extreme wealth look like tomorrow? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the world around you, and I'll see you next time.